It was kept, forgotten. Perhaps it shouldn't even exist, but it did. A piece of paper hastily folded, carrying words that never reached their destination. Words that burned the fingers of the one who wrote them but were never read by the one who really needed to read. Time passed. Life went on. But what was inside never disappeared. An apology trapped in silence. A mistake that was never corrected. A last attempt to say what was never said. What if this letter had arrived? What would have changed? Now, after so much time, it appears. Too late, or is there still something to save? What do you do with regret when there's no one left to listen? The envelope was there, at the bottom of a forgotten drawer among papers that no longer mattered. Between old bills, meaningless drafts, yellowed photos that no longer belonged to anything. But that envelope, that name written on the front, it still weighed. No one ever opened it. Perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of carelessness. Perhaps because deep down it was always easier to pretend that some words were never written, that some pains never existed. But they did. And they were there, folded inside that envelope, waiting to be read. What was written? It was not a long letter. It was not beautiful. It was not well written. It was a despair hastily scribbled, a stifled plea from someone who already knew they had lost. There was no poetry, no florid language, just bare, dry, direct words. And the worst part? True. I was wrong. I know it's late, but I need to say this. I need you to know, not for me, but for you. You deserve to hear this. I should have said it before. I should have done things differently, but I failed. Regret weighs. It doesn't dissolve over time. It doesn't disappear just because life goes on. It stays there, stuck in your throat, in the thoughts that insist on coming back in the nights when the silence becomes unbearable. It remains in the memory of what could have been but never was. But now, does it still matter? Maybe it's too late. Maybe these words have nowhere else to go. Maybe the one who should have read this letter has already moved on, forgotten, overcome, and in the end, the only one who remained stuck was the writer. But what if not? What if there is still something to be said, something to be understood? What if this letter, which was never delivered, can still change something? But does anyone have the courage to read it now? The envelope is still there, intact, closed, heavy. The handwritten name is already faded, but it can still be read. It still screams, as if somehow these words could no longer be ignored, as if the past had found a way to come back, even after so much time. But now what? What to do with it? Throw it away? Pretend it never existed? Or finally open it and face what was left behind? Fear. Because opening this letter means facing a ghost. It means reliving what was forcibly forgotten. It means maybe feeling anger again, or pain, or longing. But what is worse? Dealing with it now, or continuing to pretend it never happened? The fingers hesitate. The crumpled paper makes a dry sound when it finally starts to be opened. And then there, between the folds, the words that never reached the destination appear. Simple, short, clear. I miss you. 3 words. 3 words that carry the weight of everything that was never said, that expose what someone tried to hide. The letter continues, without roundabouts, without empty excuses, without trying to fix anything, just the truth. I know I messed everything up. I know I hurt you. I know there's no going back. But I needed to say it. Not because I expect anything from you, but because I don't want you to think, not even for a second, that I never cared. Because I did care. I do care. What to do with this? Because reading these words brings everything back. The memories, the interrupted conversations, the sleepless nights, the silence that followed, and the question that was never answered. What if? What if this letter had arrived earlier? What if these words had been spoken out loud? What if there had been a chance to try? But now, after so much time, is there still something to be done? Or is the only thing left to fold this paper again, put it back where it was, and move on, once again pretending it never existed? The paper is still there, open. The words are there, visible, clear, transcending time, carrying a weight they might not even need to carry anymore. But they do carry it. And now? Fold and forget? Pretend they were never written? That they don't hurt? That they don't make the heart ache? Or face them? Because this is not just a letter, it's a piece of the past that still breathes. Proof that at some point, someone cared enough to write, to try, to at least document what they felt. But is that enough? Time doesn't wait. It doesn't freeze moments until someone is ready to deal with them. It passes. It pushes everything forward without asking if it's right or wrong, without asking if it still hurts. But what if this letter still matters? What if somehow these words still make a difference? Because inside this letter there's an "I miss you" that was never heard. There's an "I cared" that was never responded to. There's a piece of someone that got stuck in there, waiting to be read, waiting to be understood. And now what do you do with this? Because it's not just paper and ink. It's not just regret lost in time. It's a story that never had an ending. And maybe, just maybe, it's not too late to write it. But to write a period requires courage. Because opening this letter is not just opening an old envelope. It's opening a wound that perhaps never healed properly. It's taking a step into what has already been buried. But has it really? Because if something was truly forgotten, erased, overcome, why does this letter still weigh so much? Why do these words still make the heart race? Maybe because certain stories don't end on their own. They remain suspended, waiting for someone to have the courage to bring them to an end, or to a new beginning. But how do you restart something that has already been shattered? Because this letter is not a promise of return. It is not a request for a second chance. It is merely a suffocated cry from someone who, at one point, needed to say something and couldn't. But now it has been said. Now it has been read. And that changes everything. Or does it? Because what matters more, the words that never arrived or everything that came after them? Because time did not stand still waiting for this letter to be opened. The world turned, other stories happened. New versions of who once wrote and who once should have read took shape. So what to do with this now? Reply? Pretend it was never read? Let the silence finalize what was never said? Or admit that even after so much time, certain words still have power? But power for what? To change something? To fix what was already broken? To bring back what was left behind? Or just to confirm that even though everything moved forward, there is still a piece of the past that has not completely faded? The paper remains between the fingers. The ink, faded but still legible. The words still alive. But what do you do with something that took so long to be found? Because now there is a choice. Ignore. Fold this letter and put it back away as if it had never been opened. As if these words had never been read. As if nothing had changed. Or respond. But respond to what? That it's already too late? That these words arrived when they no longer made sense, or do they make sense, and if they do, what does that mean? Because responding does not mean starting over. It does not mean erasing what happened. It does not mean things can be as they were before. It only means that this story still exists, and maybe, just maybe, it still needs a real ending, or a new beginning. But for that, courage is needed. Courage to decide whether this letter will be just another piece of paper put away, or whether it will finally be the beginning of a response. The paper remains there between the fingers, as if waiting for a decision, as if knowing that, once read, it could no longer be ignored. But what to do? Because responding means reopening doors that were already closed. It means making room for something that time tried to erase. And is it worth it? Because this letter arrived late, very late. The kind of late that words can't fix. The kind of late that has no return. But ignoring it does not change the fact that this letter exists, and that within it lies something that, at some point, was important. What do you do with a regret when it comes after everything has already changed? Because this paper, this forgotten envelope, this confession that never reached its destination, carries something that perhaps no longer has a place in the present. But what about the past? What would have been different if this letter had arrived earlier? If that "I miss you" had been read when it still made sense? If that confession had been spoken when there was still something to be saved? Because now, after so much time, after so many other stories, after so many choices, do these words still have any value, or are they just echoes of something that has already died? The silence weighs heavy. The letter remains open. And the response, whatever it is, needs to be given. But which one? Save it again as if nothing had been read? Pretend that these words no longer matter? Or let this letter, this belated confession, finally find a destination? Because the past may be left behind, but what if there's still something to say? What if there's still something to hear? Time does not wait, neither do words. The letter is still there, open, wide open, the entire past exposed on a yellowed sheet of paper, screaming what was never said. But what does it change now? Because these words can't turn back time. They can't undo what happened. They can't correct the choices that have already been made. But they can be read, and now they have been. So what to do? Fold the paper carefully and keep it as a secret that should never have been found. Pretend that this confession never existed. Throw it away. Let time erase once and for all what can no longer be fixed, or write a reply. But what to respond? That forgiveness no longer makes a difference. That absence has already become routine. That time has already taken away any trace of pain. Or that it hasn't. Because if there was nothing left to feel, this letter wouldn't weigh so much. These words wouldn't make the heart tighten. This name scribbled on the envelope wouldn't bring back memories that should be forgotten. The past still breathes here. It still whispers, still calls, still asks, what if? And this answer needs to be given. Because ignoring this letter doesn't make it disappear. Pretending it doesn't exist doesn't change the fact that it was written, that it carried a regret that was kept for so long. So what is the choice? Keep the paper and let silence answer, or grab a pen and finally say something back. The fingers are still holding the paper, but now there's something different in the air. The weight of the letter is no longer just on the words that were kept for so long. Now it's on the decision that needs to be made, because ignoring this letter means carrying the silence forever. But responding means opening a door that perhaps never should have been closed. And if this door opens, what will come next? Because it's not just words on paper. It's not just a late letter, a regret lost in time. It's a piece of a story that remained unfinished, and unfinished stories always find a way to come back. So what is the truth now? Did this letter arrive too late, or is there still something that can be saved? Maybe it's too late. Maybe nothing else will change, but there is a detail that cannot be ignored. If these words still make the heart race, if they still make the hands tremble while holding this paper, then maybe this story still has something to say. So the pen touches the paper. A response begins to be written, not to undo the past, not to change what has already happened, but because certain words need to be said. Even if they took a long time to arrive, the tip of the pen touches the paper. The silence weighs. The words want to come out, but which ones? How to respond to something that took so long? How to find a voice to say what has been trapped for years? The hand hesitates. The paper remains there, waiting. The first stroke forms. I read it. Simple, direct, real, because that's what matters now. That this letter was read. That the silence was broken. That this confession finally found eyes that recognize it. But is that enough? Because what comes after these two words can change everything. Or it can end this story for good. Because responding doesn't mean going back. It doesn't mean forgiving. It doesn't mean forgetting. But it means recognizing, and recognizing a regret is recognizing a pain. It's admitting that the past still has a voice. So the hand keeps writing. I don't know if you expected an answer. I don't know if I should be writing, but here I am. The words emerge slowly. Time passed, life went on, you were left behind. But now, here you are among words I didn't know existed, words I didn't know still existed. The chest tightens, because this is not just any response, it's a reckoning with the past. And there is so much to be said, but what really needs to be written, what really needs to be delivered? The letter that was never read has found its destiny. Now the response needs to find its own. The words keep coming one after another, as if they had been waiting for years to be written. But there is a limit. There always is, because this response cannot change what has already been. It cannot rewrite the past. But it can at least provide an ending, or one last echo before the final silence. You wanted me to know. Now I know. But now what? What does it change? What does it fix? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Maybe just the fact that these words were not forgotten forever. The paper is folded, the name is written, the destination is sealed. There are no certainties, there are no promises, but there is one truth. This story has ended, or a new beginning. And now, what would you do? If this letter were for you, would you respond? Or leave the past in its place? Comment below your response. If this text made sense to you, leave your like and subscribe for more stories like this. Because sometimes all a story needs is to be read, even if it arrived late.